Hello, my name is Voya and welcome to My Deep Guide, and today is another music instrument related video, and we're going to be checking out two very dark metal, deep and powerful looking and sounding Ibanez baritone guitars. Before we begin the video, full-on disclosure, nobody sent me these guitars. I actually purchased them on my own because I'm interested in them, so I am now testing them out during the 30-day free return policy of Gear for Music, so that I can decide which one suits my needs best. And another disclosure as well, in the intro song for the camera stuff that you actually see, those are not the actual audio recording takes that you hear in the song itself. So everything was plugged in and I was playing so that I can actually, play it as properly as it is. But those are not the actual recordings that went into this song that you heard, for the simple reason of my setup doesn't really allow, where I have my audio recording, everything, it doesn't allow for the lights and the camera and all that kind of stuff. So I needed to do this kind of setup. And now onwards with the Ibanez Black Beauties. All right, so let's start with the guitar overview for each of the models, and we are going to start with the cheaper one, the RGIB21. First bit of clarification, I've seen on many reviews actually refer to this model as an iron label guitar, which it most certainly is not. This RGIB is within the standard RG line of the Ibanez guitars. It's Indonesia made, and yeah, it's in the higher end of the standard RG lineup of devices, but it is not an iron label guitar. Now, quick overview of the specifications. Obviously, we have a 28-inch baritone scale. We got 6 strings, we got 24 jumbo frets, we got 6 staggered locking Goto tuners. We got a Gibraltar 2 bridge. We got EMG set of active pickups. And we got the bridge is the standard EMG81 and EMG60 for the neck. You get a single volume control and a 3-way pickup switch control. So you get bridge, both together, neck. No fancy schmancy stuff here at all. This guitar comes in one finish only, and that is this glossy black, which has a nice cream kind of binding on the side, which is done in a very, very nice way. While we're talking about the bindings, the neck is also bound. It has binding, but this one's not cream, it's actually white, and the binding actually continues to the headstock, and the headstock is also finished in the glossy black finish, same as the body, with a white Ibanez logo on it. So here are the staggered tuners. We got 2 types of heights, the 3 higher ones, 3 lower ones, and as you can see they're the locking type. Really nice the way they function. Now when we flip over the guitar to the back, you can actually see the construction of the neck, which is a technically they're saying 3-piece, but it is actually 3-piece neck, but there's extra pieces here on the headstock, if you can actually see. So there's a very small 4th and a 5th piece here, but that's only on the headstock. That does not extend to the neck. So the neck is really a 3-piece maple and a really large chunk of bubinga going through the whole thing. Now the thing that I really like about this is that usually Ibanez guitars, when they have a neck of this sort, you don't have a heel, especially in the standard ones, you will get this kind of a cut joining of the head and the neck, and usually that's something that I don't like for whatever reason. But in this guitar, because they have the bubinga going all the way through, like in the RGD series, there's no joining, there's no gluing of the headstock and the neck. This is all one single piece, and that's a very nice thing to see. On the back, it's a very clear kind of affair. You have the back panel for the electronics, you have the panel here for the battery, because these are active pickups. It fits okay, it could fit a little bit better, so I guess that basically means how you fit the battery, but it's a little bit kind of tight in here, and I would have expected, so this is not a flush kind of thing, and I would have expected it to kind of go all the way there. While we have this shot, here are the neck through strings, and you can actually see that the B and E, the lower B and E, they are actually moved quite further back to help with the tension of the strings. So here's a close-up of the Gibraltar bridge. It's a very nice kind of a piece of hardware. It's very nice and chunky. There's a lot of mass to it, and I think that it does contribute to the sound, but the most important thing is that it's very comfortable to play on. So the saddles are very nice, and pet peeve of mine is when the saddle screws are too long, and that is most definitely not the case on this guy, which is really, really good. Now, as far as the build quality goes, this is a really, really beautiful guitar. And generally speaking, guitars of the higher end standard range for Ibanez, they're really, really well built, but there's occasionally something that will, you know, kind of pop up. And the same thing is true of RGIB, what is it, 21? Yeah, in this case. And there are some remnants of the tool markings left while they were actually dealing with the edges. And you can actually see that on the edge sides themselves, here, there's like quite a bit of imprecision. I don't know how much the camera can pick it up, but it's inconsistent. Unfortunately, on this one, all of the imprecisions are from this side, and it's way, way less from the underside. But that means that, yeah, whoever was working on the guitar was a little bit more heavy-handed here. I mean, you can clearly see markings here, even etching a little bit into the fretboard. Nothing catastrophic, but it is something that's there, and it's something that definitely needs to be addressed, because it is a point of quality control. If we're talking about like super precise stuff, you can actually see that the binding was filed a little bit more on this side, but as I said, these are tiny little things. But then again, let's cover this whole thing in a proper way. The nut is plastic, but it is done in a really good way. So it's slotted nicely. It is the height is adjusted in a really good way. So there's actually nothing that I would need to do with this nut whatsoever. It was a really well made nut. And while we're at this, so standard RGs and yeah, non-premium RGs all come with this really handy cover that you can just flip open either with your nail or with your pick and adjust the truss rod that way. So all in all, pretty standard stuff for a standard RG. The build quality is quite nice, and the only thing that I would also want to say is that the fretwork is absolutely excellent. So the edges are done really well. There's no buzzing frets. The leveling is done really well. The polishing quality is really good for an out of, you know, just a factory kind of setup. So yeah, fretwork excellent. Electronic state excellent. No buzzing, no hissing, no nothing. Really good. But that's a standard for Ibanez guitars. Factory setup was on this one really good. There was a tiny amount of adjustment for the string height. The truss rod did not need to be adjusted. The pickup height was excellent, and all of the tuners were normally tight and yeah, in a normal kind of a state. So overall, this came out of the box in a really good state and a very playable state. The guitar does not come with any kind of a bag or a case, so you will need and you will have an additional expense of buying a gig bag or a case for this guitar if that is something that you want. Because it's a baritone, it will not fit into your standard case that's not designed for baritones, and it will not fit into a standard guitar gig bag unless it's already designed to accommodate the extra length of the scale. Because of the pointy head, yeah, that's gonna stick out kind of all the time. Material used, this is a Nyota body, or substitute for the mahogany body. We have a nitro baritone profile of the neck, and that means that it has a 20 millimeter thickness at the first fret and 23 millimeter thickness at the 12th fret with a 400 millimeter radius. It has a rosewood fretboard with an offset white dot inlay and luminescent dots on the side as well. String spacing is 10.8 millimeters, which is fairly standard, but what is not standard is actually the width of the nut. And the nut width is actually at 45 millimeters as opposed to standard 40 or 42 on these types of guitars. So we got 45 millimeters here at the nut, and at the 24th fret we have 58 millimeters for the neck dimensions. strings. The guitar comes factory standard with the Dario EXL 157 string set. That is a 014 to 068 string set, standard B tuning. So we got our B, E, A, D, F sharp, and B. And in this set, you actually get top 4 strings are wound and only the bottom 2 are non-wound. So your standard G, or in this case this would be D, is a wound string. So something to definitely keep in mind when thinking about getting a 28-inch baritone guitar. The neck profile is a nice, it is chunky. Definitely it is chunkier than your normal, like, super thin, you know, whatever, Ibanez necks, but I actually prefer this. I really do like this, and combination of the 28-inch scale and this profile, it doesn't have too much shoulders, so it's a little bit of a almost C, something between a D and a C profile, which means that it's incredibly comfortable to play. So despite it actually being wider and a little bit thicker and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't feel like it at all, and it's a very, very easy transition from a regular guitar to this one. I don't really feel that kind of difference, but if you're coming from like a super ultra thin nitro wizard whatever neck profile, which is like 17 millimeters or something crazy like that, then you will feel the thickness difference definitely. But if you're coming from anything kind of more let's say substantial, then you won't have any problems with that. It's a set neck obviously, and it has the standard Ibanez set here, which makes it really, really comfortable and easy to play. And on the bottom we have the standard kind of inset jack here. So overall, I really like what you get for the price with the RGIB21. It's a no-nonsense guitar. It doesn't really pretend to be anything other than what it is. So you don't get any fancy pickup combinations. You don't even get a tone control. You get your volume, you know, pickup, switcher, and off you go. So that's all you basically need. It's fixed tremolo, it's a string through, so you get a ton of sustain. It's really well built, and for me the most important part is that the fretwork, the neck, everything is absolutely spot on, apart from those slight little tool markings and blemishes on the binding on the side, but that's in my case, so that's going to be a very, very individual case by case kind of a thing. Overall, I mean, the whole point of this guitar is that it needs to be kind of chuggy and really tight in the low end, and the scale accommodates these strings in a really good way. So the 28-inch scale is excellent for this, provides ton of string tension, which makes it really, really nice and powerful to actually play it. A really vital component here are these EMGs, and you know, I have a feeling that even if you put like these EMGs on a broomstick, you would still get pretty much the same type of sound, because I really don't know how much the rest of the stuff matters when you actually have pickups like these. This is not a bad thing to say at all, because they sound awesome and they do they do the job really well, but their character is so strong that they will always sound like the EMG81 and the EMG60, which they are. So if that's the type of sound that you're looking for, you're gonna get that. So there's gonna be quite a bit of presence, especially in the high mid range and the highs as well. Very clear, very kind of clear, it cuts through the mix, but I am not entirely 100% convinced that these pickups are voiced to handle the lower B that well. And that's something that I've actually noticed, especially in the back-to-back. There's nothing wrong with it. It sounds excellent. It really, really does sound excellent. But when I compare it to the other one, then you actually get to see a little bit of a difference in clarity, especially when we're talking about individual notes of the lower B string. another thing that came factory set up really well, somebody took attention to actually set it up properly, and the pickups are lowered quite a bit more, which is the way that they should be, on the low B string side, which is very important because if you raise them too much, you're going to lose a ton of clarity in the tone. So that's something that that was another plus point for the factory setup. So whoever did the factory setup of this guitar, let's see, now was set up by Farrell. Okay, so yeah, U11, T11, Farrell, whoever did this did a spectacular job, and I think that this is the best factory setup guitar that I have seen up to date. So yeah, overall, I absolutely love this guitar. It chugs, it metals, it can do non-metally stuff as well because of the versatility of the pickups, and it's a really, really joyful thing to play. And yeah, having that lower registry but normal tension, it just brings out a lot more power in this guitar. So this feels like a really good standard RG that is well adapted to be a baritone guitar. And this blackest of the black guitars that I have ever seen manufactured ever is RGRTBB21. What an awesome name. So we got RG, okay, RG series, RT, neck through, B, which is, I guess, for black or whatever, and B for baritone. This thing is a bit of a mystery because at the time of me actually purchasing this guitar and at the time of recording this whole review, believe it or not, there's actually 0 written or video reviews on this particular model. You can find plenty of written and video reviews on the RGIB21, and you can also see quite a lot of written and video reviews of the normal scale brother, little brother of this guitar, which is called the RGRTB621, right? But that is a normal scale guitar, and they are not the same. They're not the same at all. So first, I'm going to go through the differences between these two, because that I think is an important thing, because I've seen people kind of assuming that just because they look the same, that this is simply a longer version of that guitar, but it's not. So the very first thing that's most important is, obviously, this is a 28-inch baritone guitar. So that's a given. But the second really, really important difference is that the regular scale, the 621 version of the guitar, comes with the DiMarzio Fusion Edge pickups, while these here on the baritone are actually the deactivator DiMarzio pickups. So that is a very, very important difference because they're quite different in their character. The second difference, of course, is the level of control as well, because the 621 has a little switch here. So you got volume, you got tone, you got 3-switch pickup selector, but the 621 also has a micro switch here, which is for single coil tap switching. And the final important difference is actually between the 621 and the BB21 is the neck itself. So both of them have a Wizard 3 neck profile, so that's a bit of a more shouldery D type of a neck profile, but it's not just a longer scale. This is a variant of the Wizard 3 baritone neck. So what does that mean? Well, there's a couple of physical differences. Both are 58mm wide at the 24th fret, but at the nut, the baritone version is 45mm as opposed to 43mm width of the standard neck. And there's of course going to be a difference in the thickness because the baritone version is 20mm thick at the first fret as opposed to 19mm on the 621, and it is 23mm thick at the 12th fret as opposed to 21mm on the regular 621. Other than that, these two share pretty much everything else the same, but these things are fairly important. So those differences are important to keep in mind, and they do make them significantly of a different guitar. So let's go over the other specifications that I have not mentioned yet. So just quickly, 28-inch scale, neck through construction that has the neck is a 5-piece maple walnut neck through, but you can't really see that because it is, as I said, as black as it gets. The really cool thing is that you do get the lovely heel here, which feels nice, and it's, I don't know, I like actually necks that do have that heel on the crossover to the head. We got ebony fretboard with 24 beautifully, absolutely perfectly executed and machined and finished jumbo frets. So the fretwork on this one is absolutely spotless, and it's really, really brilliant. And here's another thing that's actually that I forgot to mention, is that while the other one, RGIB21, is a standard RG and standard RG series, the RGRTBB21 and the 631, they belong to the Iron Label family of RG Ibanez's. We got a reverse Ibanez headstock, which does have an Ibanez logo, but it's also blacked out completely, and it's fairly cool because the only thing that makes it different is that it's because it's a tiny little bit more shinier than the silky smooth black of the headstock, is that it can just be seen on certain angles of the light. The reverse headstock sports black hardware, of course, right? And we got the same staggered Goto locking tuners on this one as well, same as we've had on the other model as well. We have Nyota wings that are attached to the neck through. As far as the hardware goes, we have the DiMarzio deactivator pickups here, and you get your volume control, you get your tone control, and you get a 3-way pickup selector switch. So you get bridge, both, neck. One thing that's extremely important to note on this guitar is that it does have a monorail bridge system. Now, the monorail bridge system makes sure that each of the strings has their own connection to the wood, and most importantly, they do not touch with the other strings as well. There's a tiny little bit of spacing, but they do not touch, and they do not share the resonances and the reverberations of the frequencies when you're playing. And this actually shows when you start really chugging and digging deep on this lower B tuning, then the clarity of the low notes really starts to shine through. This beast kind of shines in a different light than the other one, which has a unified Gibraltar 2 bridge. We flip the guitar over so that we can see what we have here, and we have a lovely satin black finish throughout the whole thing, and this is really nice and smooth. So it's lovely to play as it is lovely to look at. For me, I really love how it looks. The finish is really well made. I can't really see any of the blemishes or anything like that, and I really do like the satin finish because it's not a fingerprint magnet and it doesn't become like a super messy guitar as soon as you start playing it. So that's something that's nice. Now, also, because it's a neck through or an RT RG, you get this super level of accessibility when you're playing at the lower frets. This is simply cannot be matched by any type of bolt-on neck. other than maybe the Washburn N4, but that's a different kind of a story. So yeah, this really feels extremely good, and it gives you a much better accessibility to the playability of the lower range on this guitar. On the bottom, because these are passive pickups, you don't have the battery need. So yeah, these are passive ceramic pickups, and you get just the electronics cover, and we get the string through system. But in this case, only the lower B is kind of displaced a bit back. I mean, all of them are displaced in a certain way, but unlike with the IB21, the BB21 yeah, only has this one. Maybe that's because the monorail, how the monorails work or not, but I don't really know. I don't know why it would be so different, but it definitely is different. And on the bottom you have the same input jack type. Oh yeah, and I forgot to say, no dots on the fretboard, and you have self-illuminated, or not illuminated, side dots on the side. No binding on this one, so there's no issues like that. And you can actually clearly see that the level of care and execution is definitely on a higher level on the Iron Label guitar than it is on the standard guitar, even though they do come out from the same Indonesia factory. I believe that would be the... Yep, they both have the I in front of the serial number. I forget what the name of that factory is, but yeah, they come from the same factory. But yeah, the fretwork on the RGIB21 was and is excellent, but this is pretty much immaculate. Like, everything about it, the rounding of the edges, the crowning, the whole shebang is one of the best fretworks that I have seen on a non-premium Ibanez. Yeah, absolutely, by far. In this case, the factory setup was horrific. So this came out like somebody who has no idea what they are doing, or they had a really bad day when they were setting up this particular guitar, but every single thing on it was wrong. So first, let's start with the string height. String height was completely inconsistent with the fourth string was at 2.4 millimeters height, and the next one is the fifth string was 1. I believe 9, and then the A string here would have been something about 2 millimeters. So it was just all over the place, completely inconsistent and really bad. So that needed to be adjusted. The second thing was the pickup height. I mean, these are really hot pickups. They're really hot. And I have adjusted the height here. But when they came out, they were like 1.5 millimeters away from the string on the higher end string, and on the lower end string, they were 2 millimeters. And that's basically what the DiMarzio's general information is for regular pickups on regular guitars. That's what you should use as a starting point. But this is not a regular guitar. This is a standard B. So the bass frequencies and the energy that this thing produces is way higher than a standard guitar. And the result of that was that the signal out of the box was completely overblown and oversaturated, and you could not get a nice tone out of it when you had the default kind of setup. So I had to lower them, and I lowered them to the same kind of specification as the other one, because I wanted to have a identical comparison. So down to a fraction of a millimeter, I've actually aligned the height of the pickups on the same as on the other guitar. Of course, that's not how these things do, because these are ceramic passive pickups, the other ones are active pickups. So of course you need to set things up differently according to what guitar wants what. But at least that gave us an even play field, and that was an even starting point. The factory setup here was not that. The truss rod was really wrong. It was having a lot of bow, so that was not good at all. And they managed to even screw up the tuners as well, because none of them were actually locked and they were all rattly and not in a good place. Now, none of these things are a big deal at all, but this is a much more expensive guitar than the other one. And while the build quality absolutely reflects that, and ultimately that's the only thing that matters, right? It is also an indication of, you know, what kind of factory setup you will get when you get the guitar. U2 and T2 Benny were the ones who were checking this guitar out. Unlike the previous one, whoever did this either didn't pay too much attention or simply they didn't care about what they were doing. But the factory setup on this one was not good at all. But as I said, that's a small thing. You adjust your truss rod, you adjust your string height, you adjust the string height, you adjust the pickup height, you tighten the lock nuts, and presto, you are done. And then you have this glorious monster of a guitar, which I can't just get over the whole thing, how it looks and how it feels. It's just is so menacing, and it does make other guitars basically look like a wimp and super standard. So yeah, you feel special when you're playing this guitar. You feel really special, and while it is in a much higher price range, I would be hard pressed to find equally well built, designed, and just like really high quality guitar as this one for that price range. It would be actually quite difficult to reach the level of what you get in the RGRTBB21. So there are a couple of things that I'm not a huge fan and I'm a little bit meh about it, and that's basically the Wizard 3 profile. I'm not a fan of it because this is like a flattened D, and it does have noticeable shoulders here and here. So unlike the Nitro profile, which is much more rounder, this one is a lot flatter here, and then it just goes around, flat, around. So that's a flatter D type with a bit of a stronger shoulders, and that's an individual preference, right? So my individual preference is I do like the Nitro profile better because it's all around, for my style of playing, a little bit more comfortable to play. And that's something that I did notice, that I found it a little bit easier to play the other guitar than this one, even though the setup is exactly the same. I've done the same setup on both of them, the string height, the neck bow, and all of that kind of stuff. So it's just down to the profile itself, but it's not as bad as it was on my RGA that I was having before. That one I really didn't like because it was thinner, and I imagine that you would have the same thing on the regular scale version of this guitar, that you would get that because it's thinner, but it's still the same flattened D type of profile. That's something that either you like or you don't like, but you will get those shoulders, and if you don't like that, you really need to be prepared for that. The only thing that I will say is that this is more comfortable for me than the standard neck because it's thicker, and then you actually have those shoulders are a little bit rounder, so the arc of the shoulder has a little bit more room to arc a little bit, so it's less pronounced, and that's actually a good thing if it has to be the Wizard 3 neck profile. The other thing that I'm still struggling, and I don't know where I land, are basically the pickups, because they are weird. They definitely do a really good job at certain things, but they're not what I would call them as versatile. Now, I think that what is happening here is that I don't know these pickups, and I need to find out where do they want to live. I think that because they are high output pickups on a high output, high energy instrument like a standard B baritone, that the pickup height and the adjustment really matters, because as I said, the default pickup was so high that the whole guitar was completely overblown, and when you started playing, your lows were muddy and cut off, like distortion cut off on top, and the highs were also cut off. So you had this weird there was definition and clarity because of the monorails, but the tone was not really pleasant. When I lowered them, it instantly changed, and there was a lot more frequency response, a lot more dynamic response. They actually started to breathe, and I could actually get even more detail and clarity out of the monorail and the whole thing that this guitar actually provides. So I think that my struggle with the activators is that I don't simply know them, and that they are demanding pickups that require a lot of finagling, finicking and stuff to find that sweet spot, which is going to be different on each instrument, right? So the sweet spot on a standard scale will not be the same sweet spot as it is on this guitar, as well be if you change the string gauges, you will need to address that as well. But I think from what at least I've seen so far is that this is possible to actually adjust to get the type of frequency response and dynamic response that you would like. The other thing that I didn't like fully is that when I roll off the volume, they would really severely get muted, which is normal because they're passive, and there's a way around it. Unless there is a resistor already there, I can just add a little resistor, and the volume pot trick will then work. As you basically roll off the volume, it still has the highs, so that's something that I would probably do. But other than that, this is a really, really juicy and awesome guitar to play, and the neck through construction just gives you so much good sustain and good harmonics. And it's a really weird combination where you have a lot of sustain and harmonics, but because of monorail system, you also get a lot of clarity and definition at all times. So it's a very, very interesting instrument, to say the least. Alright, so I ordered these two to test them out, and I wanted to see what does a baritone guitar bring to me and my own particular kind of use case scenario, because I've never played one outside of a music store environment, and this way I get like 30 days to try them out and see, do I like them, do I not like them, what do I honestly think about them, and how they fit into my own use case scenario. Well, right out of the bat, I am completely blown away by both of these guitars. I think that both do an excellent job, both are an excellent value for money, and it's really, 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 really hard to find any real negatives, like deal breakers or anything like that, for either of the two guitars. Now, the main question you will have is whether you need a baritone guitar or not, but if you're watching this video, chances are that you are interested in a baritone guitar in some way or another. Now, the point of me making this video was actually the RGRTBB21 because of the before mentioned lack of any independent reviews or any kind of reviews, written or otherwise. They're available online, yet there are differences, significant differences, between its baby brother sister, the B621 and the BB21. So that was like I was really, really curious, like what is going on? Why are there no reviews about this guitar? And I really don't know. Having done this now and having played the guitar, it's a fantastic instrument. It's interesting. It's brilliantly made. Yes, it's pricey, but you get a ton for that money. So I really don't know why no information on that, but this video hopefully provides a little bit more insight into all of that. Now, in the video I have provided only the intro song. I did not go through the individual, clean and dirty examples and stuff, because the video would run way too long. It's long as it is anyway. But if there is interest for something like that, please do let me know down in the comments, and then I'll make a separate video that actually demonstrates all of these things so that people can actually have relevant information and relevant samples regarding these guitars, if that's something that you're kind of making up your mind. But hearing how the guitar actually sounds in the context of how it's most likely going to be used and in a mix and all of that, that's far more valuable, at least for me, than individual tone examples, because the tone can be whatever you want it to be. It's basically how it sits down in a mix and how it behaves in a context of things. So that's why I provided the focus that I did. So what's the bottom line for me and what's the conclusion? Well, right off the bat, I can tell you that I have not yet managed to make a decision whether or not I'm going to be, which one I'm going to be keeping. I think I'm going to be keeping one because I love the baritone, like what it brings to life, and I love both of these guitars a lot. Why I was unable to actually bring the decision is the price difference. It just comes down to the price difference. That IB really brings so much for the price that it does, that it's a really, really difficult competitor. But then again, the RGRTBB21, the iron label one, this one here, that is, I still find it really difficult to unglue myself from the all-out impression of the instrument, how it is when I look at it, how it is when I have it in hand, and how it is when I actually play it. The all matte black, the neck through, the reverse headstock, the way it sounds, because of the neck through and everything, the way the instrument vibrates when you play it, and actually those vibrations, you feel them against the body. No, it doesn't make the sound, it doesn't make it sound better, but it makes you more excited and makes you maybe play better because you are more invested into the whole thing. But then again, so does the IB. The IB does that as well, maybe not as much, but just a smidge lower. And then again, on the BB, you have the monorail system, which brings incredible levels of clarity and isolation of the notes, if that's what you're looking for. But on the IB, you have the EMGs, which are, you know, staple diet of metal, and if you're into thrash metal and any kind of stuff, like, you really can't go wrong with that kind of setup. And that's where I think I'm going to be kind of drawing where my conclusion is so far. So first of all, you can't go wrong with either of these two guitars. They are absolutely amazing and they deliver a ton for the buck. If you're more budget oriented, of course, the IB is the one that's going to take the cake because it's significantly cheaper than the RTBB21. If you are into thrash metal and just like speed metal, death metal and all that kind of stuff, and maybe not just metal, maybe you just want a little bit more of a broader scope out of the box, then I think the IB definitely delivers because of those EMG pickups and because of the standard bridge system that it has. So you get something that you expect out of this guitar. So it's a normal guitar behavior, standard type of guitar behavior, but with the lower B standard and good tension and all of that baritone goodness. The RTBB21 is a very unique beast. Beauty aside, which is for me undisputable, it's an incredibly beautiful guitar. Both are, but for my personal taste, this one is more of an impact. The monorail bridge, the neck through, and the activator pickups make this a very interesting, but a slightly more narrower focused instrument. If you want to gent your mind out, that guitar is going to deliver like nothing else because of that monorail system. The clarity and the definition of the low B, and even if you drop it down to C and things like that, it's just really, really hard to beat that. But then again, when I was actually testing it, and you can hear that out, I invite you to re-listen to the intro song after actually watching all of this, to kind of see the context of it. The differences are small, but you do hear when you're playing power chords. On the RTBB21, there was some fizziness and I can't say muddiness, it was not muddy, but there was something that I didn't really like. Now, whether or not that's due to the activators themselves, the pickup height, or something like that, I don't yet know. And that's what, you know, awaits for me to test further. But what I do know is that this black beauty monster, the RTBB21, is a djent machine, and this one is like a thrash metal machine that can also expand a little bit to other horizons as well. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video, and hopefully you found some interesting and useful information regarding these guitars, if that's what you're interested. If so, I'm happy to hear that, and then please do like the video and subscribe to the channel, because even though the My Deep Guide channel is mainly oriented and focused on e-ink devices, I do occasionally have guitar and bass reviews, because that is also a strong passion and a strong interest of mine. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video. Bye.